Good evening. Welcome to Yukon Votes 2025. I'm Chris Windier. This is the CBC Leaders Forum for the 2025 Yukon territorial election.
Cost of living is high in Old Crow, and it keeps going up.
I'd like to see more nurses and doctors that come into our communities.
We've lost a lot of mines over the few years, and I think the government needs to probably focus on a good mining plan.
We lost our community hall, and it seems like a fight to get a new one.
I'm looking forward to seeing the results of the plebiscite, for one thing.
Actually sit down and listen to the elders.
Priorities are housing and placer mining.
We had a very scary summer here in Dawson.
We're not getting the proper care out there, and we definitely need it.
We are live on CBC Radio 1, streaming on our website, cbc.ca/north, and we're on YouTube at CBC North. For the past 3 weeks, political parties have been knocking on doors and attending debates in an effort to secure your vote. Yukoners head to the polls November 3rd. 3 parties are vying to form the next government. We'll introduce the leaders in just a moment, but first, for the last 3 weeks, CBC reporters have been traveling across the territory and speaking to voters to find out what matters to them in this election. Let's hear from a few more of them now.
This waiting a year, a half a year to get an MRI or a CT scan or whatever, it's not right. By the time some people find out they have an appointment, they've passed away.
Price of electricity, that price of heating, it's just gone up and up and up. They need to figure that out.
The elderly issue is a big thing. They have to go to Copper Ridge or Whistleban. And a family, some of them too, don't have vehicles or anything, and they can't go in or they can't afford to go in because of the gas price. They will be very lonely without family. That would be very hard for them.
Mostly alcohol and drugs, which is one of the biggest problems that we have here in our community. The people bringing it in, the drug dealers, they have no fear of the court system. If they're convicted, it's a slap in the hand.
Those are some thoughts from people across the Yukon as they consider who gets their vote November 3rd. Gabrielle Plonka is one of our election reporters, and she's been covering this campaign since it began. Gabrielle, what are your thoughts as you listen to some of these voters?
Yeah, I think the first thing I think about is that all of these topics sound really familiar. Healthcare capacity, cost of living. I remember having similar conversations last election, and they span back much further than that. So I'm hearing that voters are ready for some action on these issues because they've been affecting people for a long time.
And what else have you been hearing from people as you've been talking to people around the Yukon?
I've definitely been hearing that communities don't feel like they're a priority. For example, in Tagish this past weekend, I heard that seemingly minor decisions have a big impact, like the closure of a waste transfer station or the lack of a community center. It has a real trickle-down effect that hinders community growth because it's hard to attract people to communities permanently without those things. The other thing I've been hearing, of course, is the need for more healthcare capacity, communities suffering health center closures, and even whitehorse folks going to the emergency room, which is already stretched to the limit because they don't have a family doctor. So it's a serious issue affecting almost everyone in the territory.
And what's been the tone of this election to you as we enter the final week?
I think there's been a certain amount of intrigue, interest, curiosity. There's lots of new faces on the ballot for all 3 parties. As we know, most of the incumbent Liberal caucus has retired. It's the first election with new riding boundaries, so there's lots of uncertainty, and we know for sure the Legislative Assembly will look different from the last one.
Okay, thanks, Gabrielle. We will come back to you later in the show. I'd now like to welcome the party leaders. Mike Pemberton is the leader of the Yukon Liberal Party. Curry Dixon is the leader of the Yukon Party, and Kate White is leader of the Yukon NDP. Welcome to all of you. I'm going to lay out a few ground rules for tonight's forum. You will each have 40 seconds to answer and 30 to each question, and 30 seconds to answer any follow-up questions we might ask you. If we need a rebuttal, those 2 will be limited to 30 seconds. And leaders, please refrain from talking over someone else while they're answering a question. You will get your turn. And so with that, let's get started. We will begin with Kate White, who drew the starting position from the very fashionable CBC bucket hat. All right. Affordability is, as we heard, an issue for a lot of people right now. What is the most important thing your party would do to help reduce the cost of living? Kate White, you go first. 45 seconds, please.
Thank you. So we've heard concerns across the territory, and we actually just heard some echoed there right now. Cost of living and concerns, for example, around electricity. So Yukon NDP government will put a pause on the January rate increase of 34%. We will make sure that government invests in that infrastructure in the way that they should. And we have a plan for power. We have a plan to make sure that every child in every school across the territory has access to a school nutrition program. And we're going to do that in partnership with communities and school groups and others. And so we're really committed to making sure that people have what they need.
Okay, thank you. Curry Dixon.
Well, thanks, Chris. Last week, the Yukon Bureau of Stats came out again with the cost of living stats that showed again that Yukon is some of the highest cost of living in the country. And one of the leading drivers of the cost of living for Yukoners is electricity prices. We know that the government right now has submitted, the Energy Corporation has submitted a submission to the Yukon Utilities Board to increase rates by 34%. We believe that that should be pulled back. We know that Yukoners cannot afford a 34% increase to their power bills right now. So we would restructure that submission and provide funding directly from the Yukon government so that the Yukon government can bear the brunt of that needed investment rather than Yukon ratepayers.
Okay, thank you. And Mike Pemberton.
Thank you for the question. We're committed to saving Yukoners $600 annually in the winter electrical rebate. And we're committed to recalling the legislature before the holidays to ensure that a vote on this budget takes place in a timely fashion and get money back into the pockets of Yukoners. Yukoners, no doubt, are feeling the pinch, and we get it. Our approach is simple. When Yukoners do better, our whole territory does better.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to our next question. Mining is always an issue in the Yukon, and never more so than the last couple of years. How would a government led by you balance the environmental impact of mining with the economic benefits? Curry Dixon, we'll begin with you. 45 seconds, please.
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying that I believe that the Yukon needs a strong mining industry. The responsible development of our natural resources creates economic opportunities for Yukon and presents the most realistic opportunity for the growth of the private sector economy here in the Yukon. We need to have a responsible mining industry that creates jobs and opportunities for all Yukoners, but we need to improve that system. We know from lessons learned that we need changes to our legislation. We need changes to the way that we inspect, monitor, and ensure compliance with the regulations. And we need the mining industry to come along with us. All of that needs to be done by working on a government-to-government basis between the Yukon government and First Nations governments to overhaul the legislation and improve those systems.
Thank you. Mike Pemberton.
Chris, we care, our Liberal Party cares deeply about the land, and we also believe that mining is an important part of our economy. But what's really important is mining done right. We would continue to modernize mining legislation for a responsible industry. We'll continue to protect important lands and waters across the territory with Yukon First Nations. We also will explore increasing independence of mining inspection to make sure that everyone stays in compliance. Our goal is to protect the lands, the waters, the wildlife, and that defines this territory.
Thank you. And Kate White.
I think when we talk about mining in the territory, we need to talk about the Eagle Mine disaster and what that's costing not just Yukoners right now, but into the future. Nothing that should never have happened, and unfortunately, this isn't the first mine closure we've seen in an unexpected way. We've got Wolverine, we've got Minto, and we've got Eagle Mine. The commonality, of course, is Yukon government. We believe there should be a public inquiry. That is critical. I think, unfortunately, in the last 25 years since devolution, two political parties have been in charge and they haven't made new mining legislation a priority. I've heard from folks that there's concerns that of why that hasn't been a priority previously.
Okay, we're going to ask a follow-up on that, just springing off of what Kate mentioned. The previous Liberal government began work on that new mining legislation, but the draft of that bill has been controversial amongst both First Nations and industry alike. What specifically would you include in new mining legislation? We'll begin this time with Mike Pemberton, and please limit your responses to 30 seconds this time.
Thank you. I think we need to have a good close look at royalties. That would be number one on our list. We also, from the Independent Review Board, to implement all their findings, which we've already started, and things are underway already. We need to work with regulators, First Nations, and federal partners to improve standards and increase the independence of compliance monitoring and inspections.
Okay, thank you. And Kate White.
Yeah. So again, it hasn't been a priority previously, and I'm glad I was able to make it a priority in 2021. I think a real concern with the draft that was released is that it really eroded trust, and so trust is going to be a thing that needs to be rebuilt. And to be perfectly frank, we heard from lots of nations who said it wasn't going far enough. I think when we talk about a mining industry, it needs to be one that is environmentally responsible and is responsive to communities.
And Curry Dixon.
Thanks, Chris. So we need to get back to the table. Ultimately, these discussions need to occur between the Yukon government and First Nations governments. We need to go back to the table and talk about these issues, but we also need to benefit from the input from industry. We know that industry hasn't been included thoroughly in this process, and we need to hear from those experts in the field to provide input on the development of the legislation. Mike's correct. We do need to look at royalties. We also need to look at inspections, monitoring, compliance, and we also need to have a legislative framework that allows for a successful mining industry.
Okay, thank you. We're going to ask another follow-up on this. What is your party's position on free entry staking? We'll start this time with Kate White, and once again, 30 seconds.
Going around to the territory and having conversations with chiefs and councils, and I will tell you, free entry is always a topic that is near and dear to them. When free entry is able to prioritize mineral staking over environmental protection, had land use planning been done in a timely fashion, again 25 years ago, it would be different, but it wasn't. So we are not in favor of free entry staking.
Curry Dixon, please.
So we continue to hear from industry that free entry staking is an important component of a regulatory regime for the mining industry in any jurisdiction that has a successful mining industry. And so we believe that it should be preserved. However, we know that there are concerns with First Nations, and we're happy to have those discussions around how that system, or whether that system needs to be reformed to address both the implementation of the land claims and the concerns raised by First Nations. But we want to see a healthy mining industry, and we know that the free entry is a part of that.
And Mike Pemberton.
Free entry is essential to a healthy mining sector, but we also need to recognize that the conversations that have been taking place on new mining legislation, we need to also get at the table right away and work towards having these hard conversations and have truthful, honest conversations with First Nation partnership and to find a solution.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll just mention that if you are just joining us, we are live from our CBC studio in downtown Whitehorse for the CBC Yukon Election Leaders Forum. We're live on CBC Radio 1 across the Yukon. We're also broadcasting on TV, on our website, and on YouTube. I'm Chris Windier. We will now move on to our next question on a new topic. All three of your party's platforms have extensive sections on healthcare, and one thing they all have in common is the need to attract more doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers. How will you actually find those workers? And this time we'll begin with Curry Dixon, and you have 45 seconds to answer.
Okay, well, we'll start with doctors. The Yukon government recently signed a new contract with the Yukon Medical Association, and there's actually a lot of good things in that agreement. It was signed by the previous government, but it's something that we think there's a lot of good in that agreement, and we encourage the implementation of that agreement for any government that takes office. We need to attract doctors not just to the Yukon, but to communities. I was just in Mayo earlier this week, and they haven't had a family doctor in that community for years now. So the way we do that is we work closely with communities to find ways to attract healthcare professionals to those communities, keep them there, and adjust Yukon government's hiring policies to ensure that we're actually finding creative solutions to those problems and challenges with getting folks into the communities.
Curry, thanks so much. Mike Pemberton.
Thank you for the question. We just made a purchase of housing on Wood Street that we plan on using to start with. We plan on using this to have a place that new medical professionals coming to the Yukon will have a place to go to. Will have a place to go to while they look for their forever home. This is important that we can provide doctors and other health professionals a place to call home while they're getting comfortable in our community. And they may have they'll have partners and potentially families with them, and it's important that we support them in getting to know our community much better.
Thank you. And Kate White.
So, in having conversations with healthcare workers across the territory, the one thing that they say is that they need a government that they can't count on. And so we've seen examples under the Liberals and the Yukon Party Conservatives of actually medical professionals just not feeling listened to. So whether it was doctors leaving the medical council under the Yukon Party or nurses calling it a crisis under the Liberals, really what people say is that they need to be heard and they need to be listened and they need to be respected. And so really it's going to be about retaining folks, and that starts with a respectful relationship. We have a plan to recruit, we have a plan to train, and we have a plan to bolster healthcare across the territory.
Okay, we're going to do a follow-up on this, and that question is, obviously, jurisdictions around the country and the world are all competing for healthcare staff, nurses, doctors, etc. They're all in high demand. How will your party seal the deal and actually bring those workers to the Yukon and to Yukon communities? We'll begin this time with Mike Pemberton, and you have 30 seconds to answer.
Thank you. We already have in place a physician residency program, and we're going to expand upon that, so we can attract more residents here, and make it so they can build their lives and their home in the Yukon. We also need to provide flexible work environments to retain staff in rural and urban communities.
Thank you. And Kate White.
One thing that we hear often is that there are a lot of people here who want to go into the healthcare field, and sometimes cost is a barrier. So we've talked about expanding the LPN to RN bridging program at Yukon University in conjunction with New Brunswick, and about paying for healthcare education with a commitment to come back to work for 5 years. We think this is a real opportunity because, let's be honest, we live in one of the greatest places in the world, and once you're back for 5 years, I believe people will stay.
Thank you. And Curry Dixon.
Well, thanks, Chris. We'll start by paying them better. I mean, the simple answer is that we hear consistently from doctors that aren't paid on time or are faced with such a cumbersome process that they get frustrated with the amount of paperwork and burden that's put on them. So we need to change the payment model for doctors. We need to change the payment model for nurse practitioners, ensure that nurse practitioners have competitive wages to attract them to the Yukon. And we need to make sure that we have competitive salaries for other nurses as well. So ultimately, it comes down to paying these health professionals better.
And another follow-up question on this. All three of you agree on the need for major expansions at Whitehorse General. We've heard a lot from the Yukon Medical Association, patients, nurses, and others that building is over capacity. There have been surgical delays, all kinds of other issues there. No matter which way you slice it, that is an expensive proposition. It's going to cost a lot of money to overtake expansions or major renovations of Whitehorse General. How would your party pay for it? We'll begin this time with Curry.
Thank you. Well, so we have to start by coming up with a plan. Now, we know that there has been previous plans done. Back in 2019, the Yukon Medical Association and others submitted a plan for upgrades to the surgical services unit to the Yukon government. That plan sat on a shelf for many years. So we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to come up with a plan for the expansion of the Yukon Hospital, the Whitehorse General Hospital and its surgical services unit. And it's going to cost a lot of money, and I'm afraid that is going to mean that we're going to need to take on debt to pay for it, Chris.
Okay, we'll go to Mike now, please.
I agree with Curry. We're going to have to take on debt to pay for this, but and we've committed to this in our platform, and we will follow through with it. It's important that, we're talking about healthcare of Yukoners. So the dollars are investment into the future. And we must make sure that Whitehorse General has the beds available and the surgical requirements available as well.
Thank you. And finally, Kate.
I think unfortunately what we're seeing is a health system that hasn't had regular investments in infrastructure. We heard surgeons calling it a crisis under the Yukon Party. We hear them calling it a crisis under the Liberals. And unfortunately, if a government doesn't act, it just piles up. And so it's going to be working with the hospital corporation to identify the plan and how to move it. And it's also going to be accessing funding from the federal government. I think there's an opportunity when they talk about the sovereignty programs.
Okay, thank you very much.
Gabrielle Plonka, CBC News, Tagish.
CBC News, Watson Lake.
CBC News, Carmack.
CBC News, Old
CBC
Crow.
News, Barrow.
CBC News, Whitehorse.
CBC News, Dawson City.
Okay, we're going to move on from healthcare now and talk about housing. The lack of it, the cost of it, it has been one of the most frequent issues we've heard about during this election campaign, and that's true literally everywhere in the territory. Here is what some Yukoners had to say about it.
Lots of people want to work here, lots of business here need more worker, but there's just no accommodation.
So I live in Ross River, but I had a job in Whitehorse, which I had to essentially give up because I couldn't find housing properly.
Had to change housing a lot of turnover, just like shorter term rentals, landlords renovating, stuff like that.
It feels pretty brutal and bleak. Like I don't see myself leaving a rental unit for a very long time.
And those are some frustrations there from people in the Yukon confronted by the cost of housing and the scarcity of housing, especially when it comes to rental units. I'm going to bring in our reporter, Gabrielle Plonka, now. She has been looking into some facts and figures on housing. Gabrielle.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a rental in Whitehorse and you're having a difficult time, I can tell you one reason why. There were only 29 vacancies in the whole city when the Bureau of Statistics put out its last report last spring. So we have heard people are definitely finding it challenging to find a place to live. And of course, like any small community, it's easier if you know someone, but it's nearly impossible to find a perfect situation if you're new to the territory. So I've been hearing that. When we look at the market for buying a house, the average cost of a home right now is just about $700,000, but the cost of a condo is barely below it. The average is about $500,000 or slightly over, and that's actually a little bit of an increase from last year. So I've heard from folks hoping that seeing more condos built would bring down prices, and they're feeling frustrated to see that condos are also still out of their price range.
Thanks, Gabrielle. Okay, so candidates, we do not need to debate if there is a housing crisis. It's pretty clear that there is. So we would like you to tell us how your party will solve the housing crisis. Mike Pemberton, we'll go with you first, 45 seconds.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Gabriel. We'll work to reduce Whitehorse housing wait list by 90% by next year. We're going to partner with First Nations, municipalities, the private sector to release more land and advance housing projects like Heartland Timber Homes in Watson Lake area. We support the Northern Community Land Trust Society and similar organizations like theirs. It's important that we start at the base. The land is the foundation, of course, of every home or structure built. And I really think that we need to focus in on the private sector to develop this land.
Kate White.
So when I got elected in 2011, what I heard from folks is they were concerned about housing, and I haven't stopped hearing it since. I really believe there's an opportunity to work with First Nation development corporations to build rental housing, not just here in Whitehorse, looking at the success of Dadagai Development Corporation, but that's how you get rental housing in Yukon communities, is by working with development corporations. We've heard from builders that adopting the National Building Code is challenging. It doesn't make sense here, so we've proposed a Yukon Building Code. And then I think about affordable home ownership, and so we're proposing a program similar to British Columbia, where it's in where Yukon government will pay a portion of the housing cost, so that people are paying less for the house they want.
And Mike Pemberton. Sorry, Curry Dixon. My bad. I knew that was going to happen at least once. Curry, please go ahead.
Thanks, Chris. The issue comes down to supply and demand. There simply aren't enough houses being built each year and not enough houses being put onto the market. That's because of a failure of government policy. We need the government to get out of the way. There's too much permitting, there's too much red tape, there's too much administrative burden on home builders. We hear that time and time again, whether it's the city of Whitehorse or the Yukon government. The processes and timelines put on them drives up the cost of housing and delays the construction of housing. So we need the government out of the way. We need more land put out to market. We need to increase the volume of land going out to market each year. And we need to get the government creating the conditions where people want to invest in rental housing. Right now, there's simply not a desire to put rentals onto the market, and you see that in the stats. There's not enough rentals coming on each year.
Thank you. And we're going to ask another follow-up here to this, and we'll start with Kate White. The government sets the price of lots that are released for residential housing, and it does so at market rates rather than on a cost recovery basis. So what would your party do about that?
I appreciate that question because that's one I've asked often in the last 14 years. So previously, Yukon government used to do it cost or development or market, whatever was cheapest, but then it switched and it went towards profit. I think we've seen some really bad moves in recent times, for example, with the bid process on multifamily units in Whistle Bend that have gone up substantially from last year. That's a failure of the Liberal government to address it. So it has to come down. And so it should be whatever's cheaper. But again, I think there's a real opportunity with developers.
And Curry Dixon.
Yeah, I generally agree. I think that we need to move away from the current model. But it's not just about pricing. The pricing is flawed and it does need to be fixed. But the overall land lottery system is broken and needs to be fixed as well. The way that builders access those lots, the way that they are given opportunities to bid on lots or to be able to purchase lots is broken. We need to reform the land lottery system overall. That includes pricing, Chris, but we cannot forget about the other structural things as well.
Okay, and Mike Pemberton.
Thank you, Chris. Our government committed to putting out 1,000 lots in the last term. We achieved that. We're committing to put out another 1,000 lots in the next 4 years. We also want to talk a little bit about the cost of lots. There's no profit in the cost of lots. We're actually taking the cost of developing the lots, and from that point, we're actually reducing them down before they go to market.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to give each candidate 30 seconds here to contrast or compare their housing plan to those of the other parties. And this time, I honestly forgot the order, but let's just say we'll start with Curry since I missed you last time. Curry Dixon, please. 30 seconds.
Well, I'll start on the rental side. We've seen over the last 4 years of Liberal NDP government that the policies they put in place around the rental markets have failed. We see the number of new rentals coming on being insufficient. We still see rents climb higher and higher, and that's because the lack of supply coming onto the market. We need a system that encourages people to invest in housing, to put their lots onto the market, to become landlords and invest in rental housing. That's not what we've seen over the last 4 years, and that needs to change.
Mike Pemberton.
Thank you. I think the others have said this too. We need to really break down the barriers to make it easier to build a home here. And we need some significant changes in the land lottery system. I don't disagree with my colleagues on that. But we'll support a Made in Yukon modular housing and the nonprofit sector to do so. But we also have to be cognizant of the balance between. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for observing the bell. And finally, Kate White.
Yeah, so the Yukon NDP is committed to making sure that housing is affordable, and so we are going to keep a rent cap. And I say this because under the Yukon Party Conservatives, we saw rent go up 20, 30, 40, and sometimes 100%, and that's totally unacceptable. The way our platform differs is it's based on relationship and working with others. So again, First Nation development corporations, industry, and making sure that folks, no matter where they live in the territory, have access to the housing that they need.
Thank you. We're going to ask another question on housing, and that is as regards the current Residential Tenancies Act. I know that the act was recently amended, but would your party introduce further changes to that act? And we'll begin with Mike Pemberton this time.
I think we need to. I think we need to work with all stakeholders and find what are the flaws, what's not making it work, and concentrate with all those stakeholders at the table to come up with a solution that works for everyone, for the private sector, for First Nation Development Corps, for Yukon Housing, but it's going to take everyone working together to get there.
Thank you. And Kate White?
So there's two primary things that Yukon NDP government would do. We would add a tenant-landlord relations board to be able to bring fairness to the market. So that would be a place where, for example, landlords and tenants could go to. A landlord could say, well, we need to increase it by 10%, and there's that opportunity for that to happen. I really think that there needs to be more protections in place for folks in mobile home parks. There have been some additions made in that new legislation, but it doesn't go far enough. So there's still an inherent unfairness. Person owns the asset, but they rent the land, and it makes them vulnerable. So that needs to be addressed.
And Curry Dixon.
We would absolutely make changes to the Residential Tenancy Act. We think that the changes that have been brought in over the last 4 years of Liberal NDP government have been flawed and have created significant problems with the rental market. The lack of new rental units coming on and the rising rents all suggest to us that the system that they've tried to build between the two parties has failed, and we need to make adjustments. We need to move to a system where people want to invest in rental units, want to put their money into them, and want to become landlords so that we have more rental units available in the market.
Thank you. We're going to go to Gabrielle Plonk now. Obviously, as we've spoken about housing, a big issue in this campaign. Tell us what, from our reporting on housing, what are we hearing from people?
I think specifically talking about the Residential Tenancies Act, one thing I've heard from tenants over the last year is that folks want improvement to accessibility. So obviously there is a dispute resolution process right now, but it is difficult for folks to maneuver. And so I've heard from people as changes come in, they want it to be a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more support, and have there be a little bit more help available for folks who need it.
And you and Julian Green, I believe, is in Mayo as we speak, and several of our other reporters have been traveling around the territory. What have you been hearing from people outside of Whitehorse? Because we all get stuck in the capital city bubble sometimes. So what are folks in the community saying?
I think, we heard about the topics that we've discussed already. We heard about housing. We heard about healthcare. We heard about infrastructure, but one thing I really noticed was that recreation was a really big priority for communities. For Tagish, they really want a new community center. For Haines Junction, a new pool is really top of mind for people. And, when we went to CarMax, we heard how the new arena is making a really positive impact in people's lives. And so I was really struck, and something people said to me over and over was, it might sound like a small thing, but to us it's a really big thing. When you live in a remote place and the winters are long, it makes a really, really big difference to have these recreational spaces.
Thanks for that, Gabby. So candidates, what about that? Let's start with Kate White. What would a government led by you do to improve recreational opportunities in the communities? 45 seconds.
Think about the conversation I had with students at FH College just this week, where they talked about the importance of access to recreation. And so we have a plan for that. So the one thing we want to do is we want to expand the eligibility for the Kids Recreation Grant and increase that funding to make sure that people don't have to choose between whether or not their kids can play hockey or not. And we want to work with communities. So I appreciated hearing about Haines Junction and the pool and CarMax and the rink. And in reality, communities are going to be best suited for what they need. And so it's about working together. And so we have a plan to make sure that we are being responsive to the communities and their needs. But ultimately, everybody needs access to recreation.
Curry Dixon.
Well, unfortunately, after 4 years of Liberal NDP government, we are simply in a very difficult financial position. The territory's public finances have never been worse. We've at record high levels of debt, and the ability to respond to community requests like this is constrained by the money that we have available to us. So that means that we need to make some difficult decisions. And I actually agree with Kate that the way you make those difficult decisions is by working closely with communities. We need to empower our municipalities and First Nations communities to identify the priorities that they want to see investment in and communicate communicate with them honestly and openly about what's possible. We also need to better support municipalities whose responsibility is recreation with additional funding through the financial tools that we have available to us, including the comprehensive municipal grant.
And Mike Pemberton.
Thank you for the question. Our vision is that we need to support more sport, recreation, and arts groups, and that with our youth that potentially may not be getting the mentoring that they need to get at home, that we have the ability to bring them into a sports, recreation, or art group and mentor them through that way. It's also important that we have recreation facilities available for all ages. I mean, I've spoken to seniors that feel that there's not enough recreation supports for them as they grow into their golden age.
Well, let's talk about something that brought up, which was the comprehensive municipal grant. The Association of Yukon Communities some years back complained to the Yukon government that the funding formula for municipalities seems to shortchange a lot of municipalities, specifically the city of Whitehorse, but also other ones. What would your party do to change the way the Yukon government funds municipal governments? Curry Dixon, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, the way that Yukon government currently supports municipalities is through the comprehensive municipal grant. Over the last number of years, the Association of Yukon Communities has championed changes to that formula. In fact, they commissioned a report which outlined a number of changes that they wanted to see made to the CMG. That report was actually authored by one of our candidates, Corey Belmore, who's the city councillor in Carmacks, a former CAO, and we would adopt the changes that are contemplated in that report. We know that formula needs to change. We need to see a significant increase in the funding that's going to municipalities to give them the resources to make decisions on behalf of their citizens, since we know that they're best positioned to know what is needed in those communities.
Okay, thank you. And Mike Pemberton.
Thank you. We recognize and we have a vision that makes Yukon communities, rural communities, and remote communities equally as important as Whitehorse is to all of us that live in the capital. We want to work directly with those communities, find out what their needs are, and make sure that they have the appropriate funding to achieve the projects that they believe will help their communities.
Thank you. And Kate White.
So I've gone to lots of Association of Yukon Communities meetings, and what I have heard for a number of years is that the comprehensive municipal grant isn't keeping up to the needs of Yukon communities. And so I've spent a lot of time, and since that report was presented, actually asking questions. I think unfortunately the Liberals were unwilling to budge on what the needs of rural Yukon was or Yukon municipalities. But the reality is Yukon municipalities are best suited for their own needs. They are responsible for water, waste, and roads, and that can be expensive. And in order for them to keep up with that infrastructure, they need to know that they have reliable funding, and we're committed to making that happen.
Thank you very much. I'll just remind you that you are listening to the CBC Yukon Leaders Forum. I'm Chris Windier. Thanks for joining us for our special live coverage tonight. This hour, we are putting questions to the three-party leaders in this Yukon territorial election, and we're broadcasting on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, cbc.ca/north, and YouTube at CBC North. We're going to move on now to another question. Obviously, all three of these party leaders and all of their candidates have been knocking on doors and talking to dozens, if not hundreds, potentially thousands of Yukoners over the last several weeks. And I'll start this time with Mike Pemberton. What's the moment that stands out to you from the campaign trail that affected you?
Well, just the other night, I got invited into a young couple. They had a very active son, and he initiated the invite by by telling his mom and dad, well, invite them in, right? And we sat down, and this was towards the end of door knocking in the evening, so we had an opportunity to sit down and talk to them about their concerns. This is where I like the engagement to go. I love the opportunity to sit down and actually have conversations rather than a quick, hi, how are you at the door? And my name is Mike Pemberton. But this engagement piece is so important. You learn so much from these individuals.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll move to Kate White.
So I was recently in a rural Yukon community, and I'm not going to name it because I don't want to make it uncomfortable for anyone. But I had a conversation with one of the nurses from their nursing center, and she indicated that there was a lot of burnout, and that people were exhausted, and that there was a lot of stress. And one of those things is working, being on call by yourself. When things go down in communities, being the only nurse to respond can be really stressful, and it drives people towards, that burnout. And then talking to an elder in that community who said that when the health center is short-staffed, it means that they only accept emergencies, and then people have to drive into town. And so to hear from folks how health centers are not staying open and how that's affecting both employees and residents was really important.
Okay, thank you. And Curry Dixon.
I've heard from so many Yukoners, whether it's in Copper Ridge or Porter Creek or Riverdale, that they just don't feel safe in the downtown core anymore. And I think it's very sad for me. The rate of crime and bad behavior in the downtown area has grown. It's grown in number and severity. And as someone who was born and raised here and lived in this town my whole life, it's very sad to see the state of our downtown core. We continuously hear from folks who live in the downtown core, whether they're residents, business owners, that they don't feel safe in the downtown anymore, and that needs to change. So that's why we are so keen to see significant changes to our justice system, to the way that some of our social services in the downtown core are delivered, to make downtown feel a lot more safer to Yukoners.
Okay, thank you. We have already touched on the issue of successor mining legislation this evening, but there are many more issues than that affect First Nations. They have other concerns, of course, such as joint land use planning with the Yukon government, the toxic drug crisis, care for elders in rural communities, to name just a few. How would you rebuild relationships with both signed and unsigned First Nations? And we'll begin this round with Kate, 45 seconds.
Relationships with First Nations governments and communities are incredibly important. And I think that as we talk about reconciliation, and we need to talk about the commitments made by Yukon government, no matter the stripe. And so I think about how do we turn reconciliation into action. So one of the things we're proposing is with an increase to placer royalties is making sure there's a resource sharing with First Nation communities so they can direct the money as they see fit. But ultimately, it's about making sure that when meetings are happening and listening is happening, that there's action behind it. I think for too long, there hasn't been enough follow-up when First Nations have raised concerns, and I think that needs to change.
Thank you. Curry Dixon.
One of the things that the previous Liberal government under Sandy Silver did after the 2016 election was reset the relationship between the Yukon government and First Nations governments. And I thought that was much needed and something that I very much supported. One of the important milestones in that was the recreation of the reinvigoration of the Yukon Forum. And I'm very much committed to carrying on with that good work, some of the work that's been done by Premier Silver, Premier Pillai, and Premier Pemberton over the last number of years in terms of engaging with Yukon First Nations at that government-to-government level. There's obviously multilateral institutions like the Yukon Forum, which are important, but bilateral relationships with Yukon government and First Nations governments are important as well. And so I would very much prioritize carrying on with some of that good work and continuing to develop those relationships.
Thank you. And Mike Pemberton.
Thank you, Chris. Curry, I just want to say thank you for recognizing that all the work that took place over the last 9 years in rebuilding that trust with First Nations. But I'll also add to that we have a lot more work to do. We believe in true partnership, a government that listens and learns and walks this path together. And, like whether it be building infrastructure, in community projects identified by First Nations, continuing co-management of lands and resources, advancing the new Shokwa Health and Wellness Yukon with the Yukon First Nations. Reconciliation isn't a box to check.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on now to climate change. It is an undeniable fact here in the North, particularly during wildfire season, when communities across the North, not only in this territory, have faced massive threats in the summertime. What would your party do to tackle this massive issue? We'll begin this time with Curry Dixon, 45 seconds.
So when the government has responded to climate change in a number of ways over the last few years, and one of them was the creation of the Our Clean Future report. When that first came out, we supported it and a lot of the commitments that were made in it. However, now, after a number of years, that document is somewhat dated. Some of the commitments made therein are no longer relevant or have fallen off. And so we think we need a new climate change action plan. We think we need an action plan that's focused on real, tangible actions for reducing climate change in Yukon and reducing greenhouse gas emissions in Yukon. But that also has to include adaptation. So I think that there needs to be an increased focus on adaptation here in the Yukon and ensuring that our communities across the territory have the resources and infrastructure that are resilient and able to respond to the changing climate.
Okay, thank you. Mike Pemberton.
Thank you for the question. It's important that we continue to work on our clean future, and it's not a document. And there's nothing concrete there other than to continue to work towards and trying to achieve the results that we planned out in that document. And we're committed to continuing to work on this. It's also important that we continue to expand renewable projects like battery storage, microgrids, wind, solar to reduce diesel independence as well.
Okay, thank you. And Kate White.
So climate change is one of the things that affects young people and their mental health like the absolute most, whether we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions or we're talking about salmon or anything in between. I think ultimately it's about making sure that communities have the tools that they need to be prepared for emergencies. We've seen floods and wildfires, and we've seen how communities haven't had the full support that they need to be able to respond. And it is about making sure that the Yukon we're building is one that is climate resistant. So making sure that that things aren't being built, for example, on permafrost that's melting, making sure that we have more wildland firefighters when we need them, and making sure that that everybody's moving in the same direction.
Okay, we're going to ask a follow-up now on this, and we'll begin this round with Mike Pemberton. 30-second responses, please. What would a government led by you do to help communities prepare for the likely increase in wildfires that we will see in the coming years? Mike Pemberton, 30 seconds, please.
One of the biggest things that we can do is continue on with the fire smarting that we've already started. And that's a big piece of the puzzle. We also need to make sure that people are prepared for emergencies, and our plan is to put together a preparation kit and make that available to the citizens of the Yukon. Recognizing that climate change is more apparent in the North than anywhere else in the country.
Thank you. Kate White.
So in having conversations with mayors across the territory, one of the things they said is that when there is an emergency, they need to know that the funding that they need to be able to support the community is there. And it doesn't matter what funding pot it's coming from, whether it's a First Nation getting funding from the federal government or the municipality from the territorial. We believe that there's a need to work with municipalities to work on their own emergency preparedness plans and make sure that all those mechanisms are in place. So if something happens, everybody knows the plan.
Okay, thank you. And Curry Dixon.
There is significant funding available from the Government of Canada when it comes to disasters, but the mechanisms between Yukon government and municipalities to access that funding tend to be broken. So we need to repair those relationships and ensure that there are clear pathways for municipalities to seek the funding that they need to respond to disasters. But even before disasters happen, we need to ensure that our infrastructure is climate resilient, that we're investing in the infrastructure that allows us to respond to increased things like forest fires or floods, and that requires working together with municipalities.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on now to education, but before we go to the leaders, we're going to bring Gabrielle Plonka back in. She has done a bunch of reporting on education as an election issue, has talked to many families in difficult situations within the school system. Gabby, tell us about some of the things you've been hearing.
I did. I spoke with a few families in the last month who really want to see more support for children with disabilities. And so essentially, they said that there was a lack of one on one support in schools, and it's really challenging for kids who need that support.
Okay, thank you. So, with that, let's talk to the candidates now, or the leaders, pardon me, about education. We've heard about teacher shortages for years now, and at some schools, educational assistants must act as teachers and leave the students there assigned to do without any help. How would you solve this problem, both in rural schools and in Whitehorse? We'll begin with Kate White, 45 seconds.
So the first thing is working with school communities to identify where the shortages are. So we've listed that we'll hire 35 additional EAs, and that's on top of the 60 that were put across education schools across the territory through the Confidence and Supply Agreement and the Wellness Counselors. So we're going to continue to build on that. It's about recruiting teachers and EAs and making sure that they have the training. So again, that's the education funding bit with the 5-year ability to come back. But ultimately, I think when we talk about complex situations, there needs to be wraparound services. So there's funding, for example, from Health and Social Services that ends when a child's in school. And so really we need to look at the whole child and the whole family and make sure that they have the supports that they need.
Thank you. Curry Dixon.
Unfortunately, the stories that Gabby shared there are not a surprise at all to me. I continue to hear from educators in the schools, administrators in the schools, children and families that simply aren't getting the supports that they need. And so often, those educators and administrators look to the Department of Education for support and simply find that it's not available. I think that over the years, the Department of Education has become disconnected from some of the front lines of the schools where these services are being delivered and from the classrooms where these kids are being educated. So I think that the Department of Education needs a significant overhaul to ensure that it's realigned with the needs of our schools, ensuring that supports like EAs, LATs, and other direct supports to educators in schools, educators and students are available to them when they need them.
Okay, thank you. And Mike Pemberton.
Thank you, Chris. I agree with both of my colleagues here. And I'm hearing it too, not at the doors in public locations, and we're talking about it. Our intention and commitment is that we will open and modernize the Education Act. We'll put it to Yukoners to see what they'd like changed. We're aware education shapes the Yukon's future, and our focus is on teachers and students, but we need to ensure that every student in every community has the opportunity to thrive and to lead.
Okay, thank you very much. We're now going to talk about the downtown emergency shelter in Whitehorse. This is another issue that we have covered at length over the years, and I know that it has come up in question period in the Legislative Assembly many times. I would like to know from each of you, in your opinion, what is the future of that building at 405 Alexander and the services it provides and the people who use that building? And we'll begin this time with Curry Dixon, 45 seconds, please.
Well, I can start by saying that what's happening right now is not acceptable. The current system is broken. The status quo cannot continue. We need to see a significant change with the way that the services being delivered at the Whitehorse Emergency Shelter are being delivered. We need to see that change right away. Ever since the Yukon government took over control of the shelter in 2019, we've seen a decline. The change in policies that the Yukon government made to make the shelter more permissive of drug and alcohol use have failed, and we see the results in the surrounding area. So we need to see a change in the operating model of that facility. We need to see the decentralization of services in that area that report after report have told us, and ensure that whatever services are being delivered in that area can be delivered in a way that's actually accessible to those who need them.
Thank you. And Mike Pemberton. Is that right? Did you already answer? No, I'm sorry. Mike Pemberton, go ahead.
Thank you. 405 Alexander, the shelter, we need this facility. But I'd like to ask my colleague Curry, if all these things are true that he's saying, why did his government build it in that location? But it's there now. We need to support folks. I believe in the low barrier, and it's actually working. It's providing a space for vulnerable people to have their own place to be and not out roaming around. We're going to establish an outreach worker program at the shelter, which will help immensely.
Thank you. And Kate White.
So the emergency shelter doesn't work for anyone. It doesn't work for staff, it doesn't work for clients, and it doesn't work for the downtown community because it was built in a bad spot by a government that didn't go out and do consultation. Again, that was the Yukon Party. But really, it's about making sure that there's additional supports for people. So making sure that people have access to supportive living situations, making sure they have access to treatment if they're looking to do that, making sure that there is, for example, the supervised consumption site is open 7 days a week, although the Liberals didn't support that. So it's making sure that people have access to the supports that they need. So whether it's housing or it's harm reduction, but it's making sure that people have support.
Thank you. Okay, so we are now going to talk about electricity. Obviously, that is another major issue on the campaign trail. Costs are rising and set to potentially rise further, given the rate application that is currently in front of the Utilities Board. So with that in mind, and also with the apparent problems that the territory is having with electricity supply, how would you tackle this pressing issue in a timely fashion? And we begin this time with Mike Pemberton. 45 seconds, please.
Well, I spoke about the rebate for during the winter months, but let's talk a little bit about the battery storage project that is coming online here very shortly and will help with the energy situation, and will provide stored renewable energy for peak moments the next day. We need to build partnerships with Yukon First Nations, and we need to continue on our clean future and the investments that are required there. And the big one here is the connecting Yukon to the BC power grid, and that is going to be the future of Yukon.
Thank you. Kate White.
So the first thing a Yukon NDP government would do would be to pause that rate increase. We then invest in what we need to make the grid sustainable right now, so that the three new thermal generators and the upgrades to Mayo B. But then it's doing a government call for power. So it's calling out to First Nation governments, their development corporation, industry, and others to ask for what projects they have and as to whether or not they meet our needs at the time. We believe that people shouldn't be hit by those increases or those bills in the winter months because it's an estimation. So we want to install smart meters so people can have that real-time connection. But it's about making sure that the grid is sustainable and it moves towards a renewable future.
And Curry Dixon.
Well, the project that Yukon Energy Corporation has before the Utilities Board right now cannot be paused. It must go ahead. It includes needed investments in our electric generation infrastructure that aren't optional. The refurbishment to the generating station in Mayo is not an optional project. It's something that needs to go ahead for safety reasons as well as generation reasons. So pausing it is simply not feasible. But what we need is significant investment in the generation assets of our grid. They have been ignored for too long. For a number of years under the Liberal government, they have set aside investing in generation capacity because they wanted to rely on rental diesel generators instead. That strategy has failed, and we need to invest in our grid to make sure that we have the generation capacity to meet our growing demand.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all, because in fact that brings us to the end of your CBC Yukon Leaders Forum. I want to thank all three of the leaders, Liberal Mike Pemberton, New Democrat Kate White, and Yukon Party Leader Curry Dixon. Thank you all for joining us and answering our questions this evening. We'll go one final time to Gabrielle Plonka. Gabby, your final thoughts on tonight.
I would say I think it's going to be an interesting election. I mean, there will be a plebiscite as well on voting day on November 3rd, and the plebiscite will ask if Yukoners want to do away with the current first past the post system and switch to a ranked ballot system instead. So a ranked ballot system essentially requires candidates to receive at least 50% of the vote, and then it will be up to the winning party to implement the results.
Yeah, that will be another interesting thing to watch on election night as well. That brings us to the end of our broadcast this evening. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes here at CBC for helping to put this show together. Gabrielle Plonka, of course. Kiyoshi McGuire, also here in this very warm studio with us. Also Andrew Hines, Max Layton, Cheryl Kawaja, Nancy Thompson, and Chris Meager. You can, of course, find all our election stories online at cbc.ca/north. Radio coverage is available on demand on our CBC Listen app. And don't forget to join us on election night, Monday, November 3rd. We'll be broadcasting on all CBC platforms. Megan Roberts, Callie McTavish, and I will be in studio with reporters across the territory, and together we will find out who forms your next government. Thanks for being with us. Good night.